Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, August 30th, 2024. This week, the feds arrest a cop for murder in Massachusetts. The CEO of Telegram posts bail in France. And police in Washington crack a 44-year-old cold case. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes. Super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter, James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And we're back with True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. It's so nice to see you again. Hey, I posted a little extra content this week. If you subscribe to the podcast, you might have listened to it. But I suggest you jump over to YouTube if you have time. I released a new video about the unsolved disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley. She went missing off a cruise ship in 1998. She'll be the subject of an upcoming book I'm writing. And I released a little bit of new info. But also, I'm asking for your help in identifying some women that might have info on the case. So if you get some time, check it out over on my YouTube channel. And as always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from a photo op at Arlington National Cemetery. I'm sure all that went well. Hey, one little news update before we begin in earnest. This is just in from The Wire. Judge Francis Gall has ruled that the jurors in the upcoming trial of Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen will be allowed to hear about all of his 60 confessions. And no amount of Odin worshippers can stop it now. So that guy's toast. We'll see in the upcoming trial how that plays out, though. If you're innocent, maybe you don't want to confess 60 times. I'm just, Anyways, yeah. So good news from Indiana for once. Here's the top stories. Canton, Massachusetts. Corrupt cops. Murder. And no, this isn't the Karen Reed case. Former Massachusetts police detective Matthew Farwell was charged this week in the death of a young woman whom he groomed through the Explorers Academy, allegedly. Prosecutors say that 38-year-old Farwell killed Sandra Birchmore, who was 23 years old and staged the scene to make it look like a suicide, according to NBC News. Farwell was captured on surveillance camera visiting Birchmore at her apartment at the time of her death on February 1st, 2021. The motive appears to have been to keep his affair with Birchmore a secret. She was pregnant with his child at the time of her murder. The county coroner initially ruled the death a suicide. But this is Norfolk County, Massachusetts, and Birchmore lived in Canton. So we're dealing with the same local law enforcement groupies from the Karen Reed case. She could have had knives sticking out of her back and they'd still rule it a suicide if an officer was involved, or would have. But with the arrest this week, it seems like the tide might be turning in Canton. Farwell met Birchmore through the police station's Explorer program, which is not quite as creepy as the Boy Scouts, and began abusing her when she was just 15. Police have said that 2 other local cops assaulted her as well. One was Farwell's twin brother, William. Now here's the interesting part, and maybe alludes to a more complicated story for the Farwell brothers. See, the Farwell brothers began as Explorer Scouts themselves when they were teens. Their Explorer's mentor was a cop named Robert Devine, and that's the other guy who police say had sex with Birchmore. Draw your own conclusions there. All 3 officers resigned before they could be interviewed about their relationships. It gets crazier. Hours after Farwell allegedly killed Birchmore, his wife gave birth to their 3rd child. So, appropriately, the state of Massachusetts is now dropping the hammer on Farwell. He was charged with killing a witness or victim, which is a special charge that means he could face the death penalty if he's found guilty. A very interesting arrest happened in France this week I want to tell you about. French authorities arrested 39-year-old Pavel Durov when he landed at an airport outside Paris on Saturday, according to the Associated Press. Durov is the CEO of Telegram, which is a messaging app that is very, very popular in the rest of the world, not so much in the States, but it has over 1 billion users. His net worth right now is valued at around $15 billion. You can kind of think of him as Europe's Mark Zuckerberg, right? And what makes Telegram special is that users can manually activate an option for end-to-end encryption. Now, on one hand, it's a great tool for organizing political unrest in places like Russia and organizing protests against dictatorships. On the other hand, it's also a great way for drug traffickers and child abusers to get together without fear of getting caught. When authorities asked Durov to share information or documents related to criminal activity on his app, he refused. And so he was charged by French authorities with complicity in managing an online platform to allow illicit transactions, which carries up to 10 years in prison and a $500,000 euro fine. He was released on a $5 million euro bail. Now, I'm bad with math, but I think he probably made more from Telegram that day than he had to actually pay in court. Champions of free speech are saying his arrest is egregious and authoritarian, but also maybe work with police who want to catch creeps who traffic children on your app. Durov's biography is really weird too. He was born in Russia and has passports from France, the UAE, and the Caribbean country of St. Kitts and Nevis, which he says he's never even visited, but those passports allow him to travel to the EU without a visa. Now he's been arrested and he's not allowed to leave France. Oh, and in France he goes by the name Pavel Durov, which is, I think, the perfect name for the visiting farmhand in the erotic romance novel I'm writing next. The outcome of this case will likely have ripple effects for other apps like WhatsApp, Facebook, and X, so keep an eye out on this one. Former Las Vegas politician Robert Tellis was sentenced to life in prison this week for killing journalist Jeff German, according to CNN. Tellis will not be eligible for parole for 20 years. He's 47 years old now. The 69-year-old German reported on corruption in Sin City, big-time mobsters, stuff like that. And he also covered allegations of wrongdoing within the Clark County Public Administrator's Office, where Tellis, who ran the place, had created a toxic work environment and had an inappropriate relationship with a member of his staff. Because of German's reporting, Tellis lost his re-election bid in June 2022. On September 2nd that year, German was found stabbed to death outside his home. Tellis wore a disguise and waited outside the journalist's house until he got home before attacking him. When police searched Tellis's house, they found the disguise all cut up and hidden away. And they also found German's DNA under his fingernails. So, yeah, pretty good case. Now Tellis goes to prison. So in this case, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas for at least 20 years to life. Those are the top stories. I got lots more, including this 44-year-old cold case that was just solved this week. Lots more to come. I will be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with True Crime this week, brought to you by Circuit City. Welcome to Circuit City, where service is state-of-the-art. Our friends over at Identifinders International solved a twisty 44-year-old cold case this week, according to the Kent Reporter. Dottie Silzel was 30 years old when she was found strangled to death in her apartment in Kent, outside Seattle, in February 1980. She was last seen on February 23, 1980, when she finished her shift at Gaetano's Pizza. 3 days later, police performed a well check. An officer entered the home through a sliding door and found her body. At the time, DNA evidence was collected from her bathrobe. But of course, we had to wait for genetic genealogy to track down her killer. Misty Gillis at Identifinders compared the suspect's profile to profiles on public databases, which led her to two brothers from Arkansas, Kurt and Kenneth Kundert. Kurt gave a DNA sample voluntarily. Kenneth declined. Detectives also discovered that back in 1980, Kenneth had lived in an apartment about 1,200 feet away from where Silzel lived and where she was killed. Seems like a, pretty good suspect there. So they followed him around until he tossed a cigarette stub outside Walmart, or a cigarette butt. The DNA from the cigarette matched the DNA from Dottie's robe. Kenneth is now charged with first-degree murder. Nice work, everybody. And of course, every victim is a tragedy, but this detail about Dottie that I read in the paper jumped out at me. Dottie was an official hugger at the Special Olympics. On Tuesday, a Utah judge ruled that there's enough evidence to try Corey Richens for murdering her husband Eric in March of 2022, according to the Washington Post. Richens is a children's book author who wrote a book about how to deal with grief after allegedly killing her husband. Write what you know. That's rule number one. I've always said this. Prosecutors say that Richens spiked her husband's Moscow Mule with 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl, a cocktail I like to call the Chandler Bing. Richens pleaded not guilty. She faces 25 years to life in prison and will go to trial in April. Police arrested a Lil Baby this week. Hang on, I read that wrong. Rapper Lil Baby was arrested Monday morning on the Las Vegas Strip for possessing an illegal firearm, according to NBC News. Lil Baby rose to fame in 2017 at the age of 23 after releasing his mixtape, Harder Than Hard, and the single My Dog. In his defense, I'm not sure how you walk through the Vegas Strip without a sidearm. It's really scary. The son of a Spanish film star was sentenced to life in prison this week for killing and dismembering a plastic surgeon, according to CBS News. Daniel Broncho is a 30-year-old chef with a popular YouTube channel. He admitted to killing 44-year-old surgeon Edwin Arrieta Ortega in Thailand during a tropical holiday. The two had met online and then agreed to meet in person. His defense attorneys argued that Arrieta tried to force Broncho to have sex with him. Then a fight ensued and Broncho killed him in self-defense. He then chopped up the body and put the parts in plastic bags, which he dumped around the countryside. However, Broncho's version of events doesn't account for why he had bought knives, plastic bags, and cleaning supplies just before the crime. He was initially sentenced to death in Thailand, but will serve life in prison instead. And as we know, the last place you want to spend the rest of your life is Gary, Indiana. But a close second is a Thai prison. Let's jump over to weird news, shall we? Florida doctor Giovanni Bala was arrested this week for pouring urine on the front doors of the clinic he recently sold to another doctor, according to the Smoking Gun. Dr. Bala was caught on camera on July 30th and again on August 17th spraying urine on the front wooden doors of the clinic, causing irreparable damage. He was charged with 1 felony count of what the fuck and released on a $5,000 bond. Apparently Bala had a falling out with the new owner. Whatever happened, it definitely pissed him off. Am I right? There's a lot of dad jokes in this week. I don't know. Sorry, thanks for hanging with me. Over to pop culture. Netflix this week dropped its first trailer for the new true crime-inspired series from Ryan Murphy. It's called Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, and it's about the creepiest thing I've ever seen. You got to go watch it. Great trailer, just kind of gives you the tone, and it gets weirdly erotic in places. It's bizarre, but it's going to be a crazy show. Murphy is the same producer who brought us the recent Dahmer series, by the way, and also Glee. When I was a kid, the Menendez story was big news, and the story we were told at the time was that Lyle and Eric were 2 entitled rich kids who killed their parents for shits and giggles. But over the years, we've learned that their father subjected them to years of sexual abuse, and the mother likely knew. The brothers are still in prison to this day. For the new show, their parents are played by Javier Bardem and Chloe Sevigny, and they, even from the trailer, they do a fantastic job. Instead of a book this week, I want to recommend a new true crime podcast. It's from Pushkin Studios, which is Malcolm Gladwell's company. He's a journalist, one of my favorite writers of all time, and the podcast is called Where's Dia? Here's the write-up. In the beautiful mountain town of Idlewild, a wealthy widow named Dia Abrams suddenly vanishes from her home. She leaves behind her idyllic ranch, estranged children, and a messy legal battle. Two men in her life, her son and a man who claims to be her fiancé, launch public campaigns to find her, but soon their efforts and stories begin to unravel. It looks excellent. I'm checking it out. You should check it out too. Where's Dia? And that's the show for this week. And I will see you next week, same time, same channel. And in the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.